So this is the Epsilon Bomber by Second Dynasty in Legion scale. Now you can get it now on their tribes, link down below, or keep tuned to the end and I'll tell you how you can get one for free. So this project started, as all 3D print projects do, on a 3D printer. I'm printing these in FDM. They're designed by John at Second Dynasty and he's designed them to print in FDM support free. I scaled them up by 125% though because I wanted to print them for Legion scale. They're designed for 28mm, 35mm for Legion, divided by 28 gives you 125%. And that's where I hit a couple of snags. One, I forgot to upscale some of the parts, so I printed at 100, oops. Two, I forgot to rearrange them when I'd upscaled them, so they printed merged together. But once I'd sussed that, I had these two beautiful ships. Now they clip together with open lock clips, so they didn't print in this configuration, but it's very simple. There's only 4 or 5 parts and you just put them together. There's a set of missiles that attach, and once you've got everything printed, it's time to clean it up. Now I'm using a blowtorch, and you do have to be careful. I chose this piece to show off the blowtorch because it's very, very stringy. None of the other pieces were this bad, but I over blowtorched and it kind of melted and distorted. Needless to say, I scraped the other canopies. I had to reprint them as well, so that's tomorrow's job. In the meanwhile, I added 1 or 2 details. These are the missile carriers. They just push fit and the missiles push fit onto it. So I try not to do it too often because push fit things often wear out. The landing gear just slots in, but I did need to do a little bit of filing on both pieces to get them to fit. And finally, I superglued this dish in place. Time to paint. Big models like this are often best primed with a spray can. Yes, you do need to prime in my opinion. I know some people don't. And I'm using Tamiya Fine Grey Primer. It doesn't clog the details at all and it's a beautiful spray always. With the primer layer on, I did some pre-shading with black primer. Now I really like pre-shading on a model like this because it adds a bit of life, but unlike adding a wash later or some of the other methods, it doesn't show up the layer lines that to my mind are often quite visible on FDM prints. So all you means is you go round with a thin black spray iron airbrush around all the edges into recesses and cracks to darken them up and just give a bit of mottling on any plain surfaces. The next step is to add a white coat. Now to be honest, I'd normally use primer for this and put a really thin coat on, but I'm out of white primer, so I used my white top coat, which is a semi-gloss MS white. These are all lacquer paints because I find they spray better, but they're really noxious, so you need to wear masks and vent externally and understand that they are quite dangerous. But the idea is you spray the middle of the panels with the white and you go over all the black to tone it down. How much white you use depends on how white you want your finished ship to be. So I did 1 coat one day, left it overnight and looked at it the next morning and decided it needed to be whiter. It was just reading as dark rather than a lighter spaceship, which is what I wanted. So I went back and just put a general spray paint of white over everything. There's some techniques that just don't work with FDM prints, and those include dry brushing and washes, because they tend to accentuate the layer lines. But I had these new dry brushing brushes and I wanted to try them out. Well, you know, you always need an excuse to try something new, don't you? So the aim of this is to highlight the panel edges to give them a bit more definition. We've got the dark in the sort of shadowy cracks and now we're trying to make the panels stand out. So I just want to use this dry brush to catch the edges. I don't want to go onto the panels where there are layer lines, so I don't want to do it on flat surfaces. And here we have not dry brushed and dry brushed. It just brings out the details on the edges a bit more. This design has so many cool pipes and conduits and panels that I wanted to pick some out in a slightly darker colour. And that's what I've done. It's a black grey by Vallejo and I've just diluted a little bit so it's not so opaque, so I don't lose all of that beautiful shading that I've got underneath. The danger with doing it too dilute is it becomes a wash and it just sits in the layer lines, so there's a happy medium you have to find. I mixed up a lightish blue, kind of a faded colour was the effect I was looking for, and freehand painted some basic markings, just a couple of rings and a bit around the canopy area, nothing too over the top. I will admit normally I'd put a wash on now to weather everything down, but it's hard to on the layer lines without just bringing them out, especially on a paler model like this. I may do with scuffing up the blue markings with a little bit of paler blue, just a bit more white mixed into it. I had a bit of brown sat on the palette from the last time I did some painting, and I used that to add some streaks to do some light weathering. I got out my box of pigments and picked a couple of blacks and used them to just darken areas around vents and exhausts. I love pigments, but they can rub off if you handle things a lot. I don't really plan to handle this a lot, so instead I'm going to just leave them unsealed, but you should probably put a coat of matte varnish over the top to make sure they don't budge. Pigments are also perfect for adding battle damage. Here's just a simple black splodge to demonstrate what you could do. Obviously you'd want to wear it out and do a bit more. And the real beauty of pigments, if you go, no, not what I'm after, don't like that, magic. You can just wash them off with a bit of water. But every ship needs a pilot, unless of course it's just parked up. But these aren't, they're about to take off. So I broke out my Darkfire Designs pilots. Now I 3D printed these from their designs months ago, sat them on the side. I'd put on a coat of white primer, a coat of lacquer white top coat, the same as on the ships. I'd painted in the dark bits, which is the undersuit, with black enamel Tamiya panel liner. And then I'd put on a black wash. It's a Starship filth, it's just a slightly dark grey, thin oil wash. And I'd done that months ago, and they just sat on the side ever since. So I had to go through, put on the whites to clean up the wash, clean up the blacks where they were sort of missing sections or it was just a bit thin, and put the markings on. Now the markings are blue to match the ship, using exactly the same paints. And I guess you could call it 501st if that's your thing. A little bit of green fluorescent paint on the panels and buttons in the cockpit, and it was time to put my ships on my lava table. I really love this design, and if you want to print and paint your own one, then you can get one now on the July Tribes for MyMiniFactory for 2nd Dynasty. But if you don't mind waiting till the autumn, then you can get one for free. Yes, this bomber is coming as part of my Kickstarter. 2nd Dynasty have very kindly said I can have it as a free model to give away as part of my lava Kickstarter. And there's even more exciting news. They're also going to be doing an add-on of one of their other Galaxy Far Far Away inspired ships. More details of that nearer the time. I'm still printing it so I can't even show it off now. But I'm really excited. This has been a beautiful ship. It's got so much detail and it's been brilliant fun to paint. But I wouldn't be a YouTuber if I didn't say, don't forget to subscribe, like, hit the bell button, all of that usual at this point. And if you did like this ship, go check out the 2nd Dynasty. They do loads of playable interior ships and I really love working with them. But that's it for now. See you next time when it'll be more lava. Yep. More lava, because the Kickstarter is coming in the autumn.